So, what truly defines the United States? At its core lies a profound foundation, and that is the Bill of Rights. These first 10 amendments to the Constitution encapsulate America's essence of freedom and liberty, the bedrock upon which this great nation was built. This is Proclaim Liberty. We're going to be watching this video that is on the Bill of Rights, and we're going to see if this program gets it right or not. We're also going to be making sure they get the grade they deserve. Without any further ado, let's get into it.
The making of the Constitution involved many compromises. Considering the vast differences in culture, religion, and businesses, it's understandable that not everyone in the 13 original states was completely happy with the finished product. The Balancing Act became making enough states satisfied with the Constitution in order to ratify the document, and one of these major compromises was on adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. As you may know, the Federalists were confident the new federal government would not take away the rights of the people because, separation of powers, checks and balances, and the fact that there is nothing in the Constitution that states the government can take rights from the people. You're worrying about nothing. Now, the Anti-Federalists weren't so sure this was enough. They wanted guaranteed rights, or states like Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, and New Hampshire would not ratify the document. On the other hand, Delaware did not care about guaranteed rights. They ratified the document immediately. Once they pinky promised, the Constitution was ratified and everyone was happy. Except they weren't done. They had to add guaranteed rights for all in a Bill of Rights. And before we go any further, I want to thank Pete Goldman and Pamela Benham for suggesting this video on the Bill of Rights. If you have any suggestions for a civics review video, leave me a comment below. Okie dokie, let's get to the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 changes to the Constitution, and we're going to start with Amendment 1. The First Amendment guarantees 5 rights which almost certainly appear on your end of course test. Off the top of your head, you could probably...
So, first of all, guarantees rights. Remember, your rights do not come from the government. Okay, your rights don't come from a man. Your rights come from God. And that's actually what the founders knew. And so government doesn't guarantee your rights. God does.
list some or all of them. Go ahead and try right now. Did you get them? In order to ensure we remember them all, we use the acronym RAPS, and that's R-A-P-P-S. Acronyms are super helpful for remembering what these letters stand for. Observe. The acronym NASA stands for National Astronauts Space... It didn't work. Not even close. I've tried every available combination of letters to spell something cooler than RAPS, but it doesn't exist. Prasp? No, see, it doesn't work. Anyways, RAPPS stands for Religion, Assembly, Petition, Press, and Speech. Now, when we say religion, we're talking about two things. The government will not establish any religion, meaning you can't have a religion forced upon you by law. And secondly, you are free to have any religion or no religion. Assembly refers to our right to gather.
So when back in that day, religion meant what denomination of Christianity that you're a part of, not Buddhist, not Hindu, not anything like that, because they did not recognize those religions.
Gather in groups, usually to protest, and sometimes we assemble together in a flash mob, because we just want to dance. Petition gives us the right to appeal or complain to the government. Press refers to media of any form, newspapers, news channels, social media, and it gives us the right to report on stories and news that's happening. And of course we have the freedom of speech, meaning we have the right to our opinions and to express ourselves whether people agree with us or not. Disclaimer. These rights and freedoms are not unlimited. An excellent rule of thumb is, if you're breaking a law, if you're doing something that will endanger others, you may not have the right to do these things. So let's take a closer look at limitations to our rights by going over the freedom to assemble, which is found in the First Amendment. This guarantees our right to assemble in groups in a public place. When thinking about somewhere private, like, say, your room, it is no longer acceptable to say, I have the right to assemble with my friends inside of your home. This is trespassing, and trespassing is a crime. For a full explanation of why you have limitations to your constitutional rights, you can click here and check this video out. Now, in 1791, as they are writing the Bill of Rights, the Revolutionary War is fresh in the back of everyone's brain. And under British rule, the colonists lost many rights and wanted to make sure that they'd never lose them again. So after the American Dance Revolution, which by the way, we won with our mad skills, it was time to make sure a government would never attempt to take away these rights from the people. So the first few amendments in the Bill of Rights are responses to British rule in the past. So the Second Amendment guarantees us the right to bear arms. And this of course means to own a firearm or gun. Right? I knew you knew what that meant, and probably not the other thing that you might have been thinking of. Now this is a pretty big deal because the British tried to take the colonists' weapons away, most notably in the raids at Lexington and Concord. While this can be a contentious issue in today's time, right? Do we have the right to own a gun, or should we have the right to own some kind of firearm? The Supreme Court has been pretty clear on its interpretation of the Second Amendment. The people do have the right to bear arms. The Third Amendment is...
Now, why do you think anyone would try to take that right away? You see, the right to bear arms was not necessarily just for thieves that break in your house. It was also for tyrants that try to break into your life.
The odd one out. It reads, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner. To the modern citizen, it is the most useless of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights. I mean, really, how often does a soldier come knocking on your door saying, I need a place to stay, please let me in? This doesn't really happen, but back in the time of the colonies, where we were under British rule, this was a law. We had to allow soldiers into our house, feed them, and give them a place to stay. The next couple of amendments are called the rights of the accused, and those include amendments 4, 5, 6, and 8. Amendment 4 prohibits unreasonable search and seizures, and you're going to need to know this term for your test. Seizure, of course, referring to the action to seize, which means to take or repossess. And so basically, the police cannot go through your stuff or your house unless they have a warrant to do so that is issued by a judge, or if they have probable cause. The Fifth Amendment has a lot of goodies for those accused of a crime, and it's going to establish the due process of law. So if you are being accused by someone for some kind of crime that might put you behind bars, we are owed the fairness of law, and that's known as due process. This includes a number of things, and first on the docket is the right to a grand jury in a federal crime. Meaning if someone's going to put you behind bars, they better make sure that they're doing things the right way by having an impartial jury of your peers listen to your story and make sure you're really guilty of the crime. Another right of the accused given in the Fifth Amendment is what we call double jeopardy, and this is the right to not be tried for the same crime twice. This one's a little confusing, but if a courtroom finds that you are innocent of a crime, they can't come back and say, we're going to have a second trial because we found more information. We're going to try and make sure you're guilty this time. They can't do it a third time, and so on and so forth. And this is confusing for students because they say, okay, great. If I'm innocent of stealing, now I can steal whatever I want because I have the right of double jeopardy. Well, that's not quite how it works. If you are found innocent of a crime on a particular date in a particular event, then you cannot be tried for that same crime. But if you steal something the next day, well then you can be tried for that crime, because it is a separate instance. Another right in the Fifth Amendment is your right to remain silent. These are included in your Miranda rights. You have the right to not testify against yourself.
Please the fifth. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything you say, 5. Go ahead, ask me a question. Did you?
It's up to the prosecution, who has the burden of proof, to find evidence that proves you are guilty of the crime. The final right in Amendment 5 is called eminent domain, and this means if the government needs to take your property or your things, then they must compensate you for it fairly. So if the government needs to take your home or the land that your home is on, then they need to give you more than $10 for that land and home. They have to give you a fair value. And this might surprise a bunch of you. You did not know that the government could take your stuff and give you money for it, but they can, especially if they need it for some kind of greater public good, like building a road through a property you own or a bridge or some kind of infrastructure. Moving on, we have Amendment 6, which gives you a couple of things if you're accused of a crime, and the first is a speedy and public trial. Remember, if someone's accusing you of a crime, you're innocent until proven guilty. But if you are arrested on January of 2022 and your trial is set for December 2025, this is considered to be too long to defend your good name. And while you're defending your good name, you need to have a public trial, meaning people can be there and see what's happening and know there's nothing corrupt going on, like you paying off the judge or the prosecution not presenting any kind of evidence and still being called guilty for the crime. You also have the right under the Sixth Amendment to an impartial jury, and that's a word that we're going to need to know. Impartial means fair and balanced, not leaning towards any side. Now, the jury is the group that's going to determine your innocence or guilt by listening to the facts and the story, and it would be very unfair if the people that were judging you were your buddy or your classmate or your best friend. On the other hand, it would be equally unfair if the jury was full of people like your ex-boyfriend, your angry neighbor, or that one science teacher that just really did not like you. What's up with science teachers anyways? Now, it is your Sixth Amendment rights that allows you to know what are you accusing me of and who exactly is accusing me. The people who are accusing you cannot be anonymous. They must appear before you so you can see them and see their face and say, "Aha, it was you." Finally, the Sixth Amendment gives us the right to legal defense even if we cannot afford a lawyer. So if you're incredibly poor, you are going to be given an attorney with amazing anime hair, and they're going to defend you in a court of law and do a goofy dance after they win. Okay, so the Eighth Amendment is the right to not be cruel and unusually punished. Now, obviously, all of the old forms of punishment that involve public humiliation fall into cruel and unusual punishment, but it includes other things, like excessive fines and excessive bail. Any form of torture violates the Eighth Amendment because that is incredibly cruel. And of course, the punishment must fit the crime. If you steal fruit stripe gum, which I don't even know why you would bother with, you're not going to get 30 years in prison for that crime. That would be excessive and cruel and unusual. And now we're going to go back a ways to the Seventh Amendment, which does not really fall under the rights of the accused. You see, we're not talking about criminal law where you're stealing something or you could be guilty and go to jail. We're talking about civil law, which is just generally disagreements between people. Like when the tattoo parlor messes up your tattoo. This is not a crime, but you might want to sue them over this disagreement. So the Seventh Amendment guarantees a trial by jury in a civil lawsuit so that you and the tattoo parlor can go to court and have a jury of your peers listen to your horrific tale. Now, the Ninth Amendment seems tricky, but it's not. It reads, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people." Confusing, but essentially it means just because some rights are written down does not mean other rights that aren't written down can be denied. For instance, there's nothing in the Bill of Rights that says you have the right to wear tall socks or do bad cosplay. But just because it's not written down doesn't mean that these rights can be denied. Unless Congress writes a new law that specifically states you cannot do something, we should assume we have the rights to do things even though they're not specifically listed in the Bill of Rights.
That's very important because there are some judges and even some attorneys that are saying, well, it doesn't necessarily say taxes. But let's continue.
The 10th and final amendment in the Bill of Rights states, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." Basically meaning, if it's not in the U.S. Constitution that the federal government should be doing this thing, then it's saved for the states. They can handle it however they want. Things like education are left up to the states. The federal government makes no mention of education within the Constitution. They say, hey man, we're going to leave that to you, Florida. It's up to you. Same thing goes for the driver's license. That's why every state has a different driving age or different requirements for operating a motor vehicle. It's because the federal government does not want to do this. And so they leave it up to the states. That's the 10th Amendment. When we can tell the government we have the right to privacy, You cannot search and seize my home without a warrant, then it reduces the power of the government and it gives power to the people. Same thing with getting a lawyer or having a speedy trial. We're putting the government on the clock and telling them, hey, you don't have unlimited power, we have rights. And that's a very cool thing. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks so much for sticking to the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. We'll make more videos soon.
Perfect. So, I mean, did you see that? Did you see how they used the Constitution, they used the Bill of Rights, and they simply explained, right? We explored the Bill of Rights. We know now that it's more than a historical artifact, right? It's vibrant, it's living. It doesn't give us our rights, it just lets us know what the government is prohibited from doing. It should be called the Bill of Prohibitions. This is America, right? So, in the wake of America's independence, you saw that there was a critical need that arose to safeguard individual freedoms from potential government overreach. And isn't that what we have now? You know why? Because there hasn't been enough people that say, stop digging up my yard. Stop putting your spoon in the vanilla pudding, all right? Stop trying to eat the catfish dinner off of my plate. This is going to lead to some intense debates, I know. But remember, the founding fathers had intense debates. It culminated in a groundbreaking solution, the Bill of Rights. Okay, by the way, the Bill of Rights was actually ratified December 15th of 1791. Now, you already know the 10 Amendments, right? They weren't just designed as rules, okay? But they were prohibitions for the government, okay? Letting us know explicitly the guarantees, okay? Freedom of speech, religion, press, protection against unwarranted government intrusion. This is very important. They are trying to tell us that America is a democracy. You and I both know that it is not. We know that it is a republic. Okay? As a matter of fact, there was actually someone that said this out loud. Do you remember who that someone was? Oh, yeah, we can go ahead and read it to you. No big deal. See there? I bet you didn't know that the Constitution doesn't contain the word democracy anywhere in it. But it does mandate, and I quote, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Now, calm down. I'm not talking about the party. Okay. Republican was never supposed to be a party. Okay. Republican is the form of government. And the Bill of Rights was born out of what they call a compromise, but it was also visionary because it would forever change the landscape of governance and personal liberty. You see, when you understand the Bill of Rights for the first time, it's like discovering a shield that has been invisibly defending you all along. What these amendments do is they reveal the profound depth of thought and foresight our founding fathers had in envisioning a nation that genuinely protects its people. Not like Britain protected, quote unquote, protected them. You see, this revelation sets us up to appreciate not just the words penned over 2 centuries ago that are in cursive. And sometimes I wonder, man, is that why they don't want children learning cursive? Because they don't want children to read the original Constitution? I wonder. I don't know, right? I don't know. But each amendment offers a unique layer of protection against the tyranny that they had to experience. They experienced tyranny, they experienced oppression, and now each amendment is offering a unique layer of protection against that, and it acts as the guardians of liberty. So, folks, I want you to remember that this is not a democracy. The America that you and I live in, they're trying to turn it into a democracy, which is why at every turn you'll see news anchors You'll see celebrities. You'll see people that are supposed to know something, right? They'll say the word democracy. You'll even hear some news anchors say this is a danger to our democracy. Well, democracy is dangerous. All democracies lead to tyranny, they lead to mobocracy, and ultimately dictatorship. That's right. Oligarchies are involved in democracies. Do we have that right now? Do you see what I mean? It's because people did not step up and say, this is the identity of America. And this is what happens when someone takes your identity away. It can happen to a city, it can happen to a state, it can happen to a person, it can happen to a nation. But thank God that our nation is coming back to its identity, which is a republican form of government. Let me know what you think about this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.